Now, one of the talking points for President Uhuru Kenyatta and John Kerry's meeting today was corruption. It seems to be that thing that Kenyans cannot shake. From the very first regime to the current one, all governments seem to be battling this monster. The question is Uhuru Kenyatta really fighting graft, or is he just offering lip service? On the record with KTN's Edith Kimani returns tonight with some very serious questions.
If there's one topic President Uhuru Kenyatta seems to like talking about, it's this one.
My government will not tolerate corrupt public officers.
We will hold our anti-corruption bodies accountable. Corruption is the greatest threat.
But it doesn't come as a surprise that the head of state would keep bringing up corruption. Kenya is ranked 145th out of 175 on the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, meaning that Kenya is only less corrupt than 30 other countries. The perception is so bad that Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe, whose country, according to that same index, is more corrupt than ours, asked officials in his government to not be like Kenya and Nigeria, where you have to dip into your pocket to have anything done. Now, it seems outrageous, but Kenyans seem to agree. Just last month, Ipsos Synovate asked what Kenyans consider to be the country's biggest problems. Corruption was number 2. Kenyans think corruption is a bigger problem than insecurity. So, in preaching to the choir,
corruption is the greatest threat to our security, fundamental rights, and social-economic transformation.
Why is it then that the president has on several occasions acted contrary to that view? Let's begin this review from 2006 when Parliament's Public Accounts Committee was investigating the now infamous Anglo leasing scandal. PAC at that time recommended that all Anglo leasing contracts be terminated. They also said that all monies owed to the fraudulent companies should not be paid. Did I not mention that the man who chaired that committee, which made those recommendations, was Uhuru Kenyatta? This same Uhuru Kenyatta.
The choice was either to start cutting back on government expenditure, to start cutting back on programs and service delivery to Kenya, or to pay in order for us to be able to move forward as a country.
The president okayed the paying off of 1.4 billion shillings of your tax money to phantom entities who have real lawyers that sued Kenya, who wired this hard-earned Kenyan tax money to real bank accounts held by the phantoms or proxies of the phantoms that Kenya has been looking for over 15 years. Still, Kenya paid. Uhuru's reasoning that we needed to pay off the debt in order to float a Eurobond was highly debated. But in the end, Kenya paid off the amount, floated the Eurobond, which was oversubscribed, and Kenya collected $2 billion. But the question is, did the end justify the means? Was it okay to turn a blind eye on corruption for development's sake? Did the president set a precedent of rewarding fraud and impunity? At any rate, it didn't seem as if Kenya was willing to defend itself. Now, it sounds improbable, but apparently it's not. So take this quote, for instance. We have concluded that GOK is not currently managing these processes very well, and consequently, there is a danger that ground will be lost, and GOK, despite having good fundamental case positions, may be unsuccessful in legal proceedings and in other asset recovery. Now, that isn't some government-bashing NGO crying wolf. That was a 2008 PricewaterhouseCoopers report on the status of some of the Anglo leasing cases that were before the court in the UK. Now, look, the government could try and drop these mistakes at the doorstep of previous regimes, only it can't. When the government had the opportunity to actually execute these cases properly, it at one point sent Njia Muturi, the country's current Solicitor General, to stand as co-counsel for Kenya. He was summarily dismissed because he didn't have a license to practice in England and Wales. However, that, as the saying goes, was spilt milk. So the president moved on to this complaint on government officials.
Starting with my own office here. Kuna maofisa huko ambao wanafikiria hiyo ni nyumba ya kutengeneza pesa. Na watu wajipange kwa sababu they will see something very soon.
That sounds like a very good promise that corruption will be decisively rooted out from the top. The State of the Nation address seemed to be that political moment when action would finally be taken.
I also hereby direct that all officials of the national and county governments that are adversely mentioned in this report, whether you are a cabinet secretary, principal secretary, or chief executive of a state institution, to immediately step aside.
But soon, that very institution that was mandated to investigate the 175 public officials alleged to have been corrupt began tearing at the seams. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commissioners were fighting the Secretariat. The Secretariat was fighting the Commission. And then the President, to end it all, with the ordering of a tribunal to investigate claims of corruption of the EACC chair and vice chair. They, of course, stepped aside. But according to the Commission for the Implementation of the Constitution, that has now disabled the EACC. See, according to the CIC, the EACC has no legal force to function without a properly constituted commission. All this happened 30 days to the end of the 60-day deadline that the President had given to the same EACC to investigate claims of corruption of the 175. Then there's this next statement.
There is no sacred cow in this government, none.
Yet, it appears there could be, or at least there could have been. A week before the President released the list of shame and urged officials implicated in graft to step aside, the President had made what quickly became an unpopular decision in the country. Uhuru Kenyatta appointed Chris Okemo as a board member of the Kenya Seed Company. The same Chris Okemo who is wanted in the UK for allegedly defrauding what we now know as Kenya Power Company 900 million shillings. The same Chris Okemo who is also wanted for allegedly laundering the money in infamous tax haven Jersey Island. That Chris Okemo is a man President Uhuru Kenyatta picked to be a government official. Even though Okemo declined that appointment, the whole thing was seen as a mockery of the fight against corruption, especially coming from the same man who said this.
My government will not tolerate corrupt public officers.
But there are officers tied to allegations of corruption in the procurement process of the standard gauge railway that was given the green light. There's the President's decision to allow 10,000 police recruits to continue on to training despite numerous claims of corruption by government officials in their recruitment exercise. There's also the sudden death of www.president.go.ke, the highly publicized website where all Kenyans were supposedly able to report cases of corruption for the attention of the office of the President. All this has happened despite the President having said this.
We must change. We are not going to do things the same way.
Well said, Mr. President. But saying is not doing.